Before we begin the agenda, the Wichita-Sedgwick County Metropolitan Area Planning Commission and the Wichita-Sedgwick County Board of Zoning Appeals would like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to this public hearing. Copies of the agenda for today's meeting, the public hearing procedure, and Planning Department staff reports on all agenda items are available in the lobby of this conference room. The Planning Commission's and the BZA's bylaws limit the applicant on a zoning, subdivision, or variance application and his or her representative to a total of 10 minutes of speaking time at the start of the hearing on that item, plus up to 2 minutes at the conclusion of that hearing. All other persons wishing to speak on agenda items are limited to 3 minutes per person. However, if they feel that it is needed and justified, the chairman may extend these times by up to 2 minutes. All speakers are requested to state his or her name and address for the record when beginning to speak. When you are finished speaking, please write your name, address, and the case number on the sheet provided in the lobby. This will enable staff to notify you if there are any additional proceedings concerning that item. Please note that all written and visual materials you present to the Commission and the Board will be retained by the Secretary as part of the official record. If you are not speaking but you wish to be notified about future proceedings on a particular case, please sign in on that same sheet. The Planning Commission and the Board are interested in hearing the views of all persons who wish to express themselves on the agenda items. However, we ask that all speakers please be as concise as possible and avoid long repetitions of facts or opinions which have already been stated. For your information, the Wichita City Council has adopted a policy for all city zoning items. A copy of this policy is available in the lobby. The City Council relies on a written record of the Planning Commission hearings and does not conduct its own additional public hearings on these items. The decision of the BZA is final. Any appeal of a decision of the BZA is to district court.
Okay, we've got a couple of items on the Board of Zoning Appeals, so we will recess the Planning Commission meeting and open up the meeting for the Board of Zoning Appeals. First item of business is approval of the minutes from January 23rd. My records show that all were present for that. Is there a motion on those minutes?
So moved. Second.
Have a motion to approve by Mr. Green, a second by Mr. Joe Johnson. All those in favor signify with the upraised hand. Motion passes unanimously. I believe that's 9-0. See which items we can take by consent, if any. The first item of business is a variance to reduce a side setback on a property located at 338 West 34th Street South. Anybody on the commission wish to hear that item? We will hear that item. The second item is a variance to reduce the entire interior side setback on a property located east of 17th Street North at 3117 East Stadium Drive. Anybody on the commission wish to hear that item? Seeing none, is there anybody in the audience wish to hear that item? We'll take that by consent.
Move we approve item 3.
We have a motion by Mr. Green, a second by Ms. Miles. I have a question by Mr. Foster.
Yeah, I was curious, and this is this number 1? Which one are we looking at?
This one is number 3. Yeah, BZA 2020-00001.
Okay. I mean, this thing is pretty unsightly, frankly. My question is, can we put a condition in there that would require the paint to match the structure of the house? Because the way it is now, it's just like I said, it's unsightly.
I would say that probably what we need to do is hear it. If we're gonna take some action like that, then we need to go through the process. So looks like we want to hear it.
Hear it then. Yeah,
okay, please. We will hear both of those items. First item we'll take is the property at 338 West 34th Street. Matt?
This is Philip Zievenbergen on behalf of Matt Williams with planning staff. BZA 2019-60 is the request to reduce the interior side setback from 6 feet to 0 feet to allow a partially built carport. The backstory on this property is that there was a fire on the property, and the owner of the property were required to repair the roof and some interior and exterior walls. During the process, new roof trusses were designed to take the roof line over the existing driveway on the west side of the property to create the carport. The framers installed the trusses to extend to the property line. At this point, a complaint was filed and an inspection was conducted, and this initiated the application of it. As you can see here, all the properties around it are zoned single-family SF5 in a neighborhood. We've got an aerial photograph here, and then a pretty basic site plan, but what's really more telling is the pictures around the property. You can see here, this is the existing structure. This is where the roof line was extended over the driveway to the carport. I believe Matt did provide you some additional photos. I believe there was some photos of the damage of the fire, as well as some other photos in addition to the ones here on the screen for your consideration this morning. You can see the structure is about 1.5 to 2 stories tall, and the gable consisted of that all the way across the carport. Looking at it from the different angles, this is directly across the street. The owners there have a pretty standard looking carport that we see in Wichita as well. Regarding the uniqueness, the applicant states that there were actions of a tenant that caused the fire, which had extensive damage. Repairs were required on the roof and the interior and exterior walls. Just kind of reiterating that, at that time was when the roof line was extended over the driveway. At the point of the inspection is when the work stopped. Due to the roof being open, the roof decking and the shingles were installed in order to prevent any further damage during the process of the variance request to determine if they could keep it. Regarding adjacent property, the applicant has stated that they do not foresee any adverse harm for nearby property owners. In addition, the carport will not be causing any drainage or other fire concerns. Hardship, the applicant has stated that they have not been successful in finding a framer to finish the work on the structure or to reframe it to bring in the end of the carport from away from the property line. The applicant plans to complete the internal work of the framing and supports, but feels that moving the carport is beyond their capabilities. The applicant asserts that the variance request will not adversely affect the public health, safety, morals, convenience, or prosperity, or the harmonious development of the community. They also state that they do not feel that it violates the spirit and intent of the code. Staff recommendation on this is to have the variance be granted with the following conditions. The first one being submitting a revised site plan that clearly shows all property lines. As I showed you before, the site plan is fairly basic, and it's hard to distinguish what exactly it is or where in relation the carport is to the actual property line. An inspection must be done to verify that the structure has received all proper building permits and has passed any inspections, and that the interior side reduction would only apply to the area of the carport. With that, I can stand for any questions.
Any questions for Philip?
Yes, Mr.
Foster?
Fox.
Philip, is this working?
Yes.
Okay. 2 questions. It mentions the layout of the trussing, but if the trussing went to the property line, does the soffit and fascia board extend onto the other property?
I don't know any of that information. I could defer to the applicant to see if they know. I think truly, overall, a survey of the property would have to determine where exactly the property lines are in relation to all features of the extension.
Second question is, you mentioned the fire code. What is the fire code in a situation like this? What needs to be that separation or setback?
Well, what I stated was what the applicant, their opinion on it, their assertion regarding fire code. I don't know off the top of my head what the fire code is in relation to building separation. What I can say that is similar, we do allow accessory structures on the same lot. So, I know these are two separate lots. That the separation for an accessory structure within the zoning code is 3 feet away from any other building. I don't know how far the neighboring house is away from the property line or what that separation is there. So I apologize, I can't speak to what the fire code.
Thank you.
Mr. Florence?
I noticed they was issued a stop work order. Did somebody else come behind them and give them the okay to go ahead and complete this work?
I'm unaware. I apologize. I'm filling in for Matt, so I don't have the full backstory. Potentially the applicant can speak to, they had the stop work order, and as I mentioned, the decking and the shingles were put in place, but I could defer to the applicant. They may be able to fill in those details.
Any additional questions for staff? Thank you, Philip. Would the agent or applicant like to come forward, please? State your name and address for the record, and you will have 10 minutes.
I understand. I'm Candy Shriver. 338 West 34th Street South is my mother-in-law's property. And the first question, the survey shows that it's 0.7 of a foot over the property line. I think that it's 12 foot from the house to the neighbor's house, and this structure is I think it's 11 and a half feet. And so I'm not saying it right, it's like 18 foot to our house. So they've told me that it's over the line. And when they brought the cranes in and put it up was when it actually came to my notice. And the stop work order is what made me go down and get the permit put in my name. First it was in S&A Construction. Found out that the amount of our insurance policy was not going to cover the repairs, so I took it on myself. And so it's been a mistake and a little bit of a mess ever since August. Any other questions?
Questions for the applicant? Seeing none, thank you, ma'am.
And to address the fire, the safety thing, I think you have to build a 2A firewall, which is double sheetrock. That's what I've heard. So we're just here to find out what I need to do. Thank you.
Is there anybody from the audience wish to speak on this issue? So come forward, state your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes.
My name is Margaret Gifford, my husband Wayne Gifford. We are the property directly to the west of the applicant's property at 344 West 34th Street South. I've given you a timeline, I don't know whether you've looked at it or not, and several pictures from the beginning of this construction. We've known these people for 30 years. We've always gotten along. While I feel for you, Candy, and I know it's going to be an expense, we did from the very beginning, the second the posts went up and we saw that they were near, if not on the property line. We didn't know at the time. We told her we were not going to approve this, that this is on our property line. At that time, it was not a carport. It was supposed to be a covered porch, is what they had told us. We go on from there, as you'll see on the timeline. They continued to work. Then the trusses came in for the rest of the house. I've got pictures showing this all along. Then the sheeting goes up. I'm talking to several inspectors with the city of Wichita at this time, telling them, what can we do? This is not right to us. It's on our property line. They came out, put the stop work order on finally. Shortly after that, and I don't know very well, could have been approved. At one point, they were approved to work on the east end of the house. We're told not to work on the west side. But the work continued. Then they put the stop work order on. Then the next thing, it's roofed. I called him again. At this point, the inspector said, it's going to have to come down. They'll never get an occupancy permit with it the way it is. It's not a standard carport. There is a room up above there. I don't know at this point if the applicant could tell you if it's going to be a bedroom, if it's a room for hot water heater, heating system. I believe that could be what it is. So as far as we are concerned, they did come out in, I believe, December maybe, and they did survey the property. Property lines are clearly marked. You can see the orange stick in probably several of the pictures that I've provided, showing it is on, and the posts actually are beyond, I believe, the property line. So at this point, we would ask you to please deny this. They have been told numerous times by the inspectors in Wichita that this is going to have to be moved back to the setback. The picture clearly shows the stop work order said has to be set back 6 feet. We feel this is an encroachment of our property. Our bedroom is right there where this comes to our property line. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions for the speakers? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else from the audience wish to speak on this item? You'll be given an opportunity, ma'am. Anybody else? Okay, now the applicant, if you'd like to come forward, ma'am, you have 2 minutes for rebuttal.
I'm trying to remember the exact dates. The crane comes out. They had already made the truss gables on the ground, and so we didn't know exactly where our property line was until, like she said, in December. So during the time that they brought the trusses, I believe it was like August the 16th, and they were up by August the 19th. It wasn't until Labor Day, which is September. The neighbor and I had been talking the whole time. And when I hired the framers to do this, they assured me that you can have a carport all the way to your property line, and that's what I thought I was doing, was putting a carport to my property line. They had me, the framers, Jorge and Omar, said, no, go through the neighborhoods and see all of the carports. We know we're right. We do this all the time. And it wasn't until the stop work order did I go downtown to this building and talk to Carla and David. And they did tell me that I have a right to my property line and 2.5 foot for gables and eaves and gutters and things. So I believe it's just a short amount, 2 foot, that we're asking for, not the entire property line, just 6 foot. And we will have to make a modification, like I said, 0.7 tenths. And the roofers have told me that they would be able to seal that back up.
Your time has
fairly
expired.
easy.
Do you need additional time?
No, I couldn't talk anymore unless I had a gallon of water.
Okay. Yeah, ma'am, if you could stay there, we have a question for you. Mr. Green?
Yeah, I'm unsure. You said you have a survey there. That's going to need to be submitted and reviewed. What part, how much of that structure, is it the roof, is it the gable, is it the post? How much of it actually encroaches onto the adjoining property, if any?
If you look at the post, that is not on their property. It's that really huge easement that they build underneath. So it's like, it's a whole foot right there. They've told me if we just shave the very end, then it would actually be in my property of 0 0.7 of a foot. So it's less than, what is that, less than an inch over her property, their property line.
It probably says 7/10 of a foot is
Yeah,
what you're trying to say.
Yes,
That'd be
yes.
about 8 inches.
It's less than an inch over. It's the 0.07 over.
0.07.
It's barely over, which is, yeah, and yeah.
Mr. Hartman?
At what point did you get a building permit for this?
Well, S&A Construction carried the permit when we were originally going to go with them, before we found out, the price difference. And when the stop order went in, I went down the next day, which I look at my notes, I think it's September the 9th, I think. Oh, my dates are terrible. But as soon as the stop work order in the picture, the next day I was downtown talking to you guys and getting the permit put in my name. Up to that point, I didn't know what to do with permits.
And when they reviewed the plans, did they say that the carport was acceptable or unacceptable?
When I speak to Wayne, it was acceptable, and it was acceptable for 3 weeks. And it was okay until it wasn't okay. And that was after they had an event on Labor Day. And their family is worried about it. So we addressed their concern of the fire safety. I mean, the house did catch on a fire with a renter, and so I understand their concern. So the intent is to make sure that we make it safe.
So you're saying that the city approved the carport being on the property line?
No, when I put the permit in my name, they addressed the things that I thought was everything, which was I added an addition to the back, 280 square foot. And when I came down one more time, Charles Merriman's been wonderful when he'd come through and point out things that I needed to do and what needed finished. Because after the framers spoke with neighbors, they never came back again. So, and I have tried like 9 different people, Old Feather, Gill, just several different names of people. They've come out and actually looked at it and told me, this is what needs to be done, but we're swamped. And I'm thinking, and I told them that it would probably be spring to make the corrections. We weathered it in when it was raining inside of the house. We did wrap it with just the paper that you put down before you put roofing, but it was still leaking. So we were concerned about the interior getting worse damage. It had already rained on it, and the floors had to be pulled up, so it was just, I'm trying to protect it it's not finished by any means, as you can see. It's kind of embarrassing looking.
Mr. Johnson?
Can you tell us what is above the carport?
That's empty space. Troy from McCune Heating and Air Conditioning said, let's make this right here right as you go up the stairs at the far back be the utility, which is where he put the heater. Jerry from McCune was going to lay it down, but it was going to go all the way across. And in order to keep it in my space that's allowable, we put it standing up. And it is insulated already as well, airtight of Wichita.
Thank you. Any additional questions for the speaker? Thank you, ma'am.
And where do you want me to?
Just give that to Philip. Bring it back to the board. Mr. Foster.
I've got two questions. Philip, I don't know if you can look at that survey, but do we indeed have an encroachment on the other property? We've gone from 0.7 to 0.07. Can you discern from that, do we actually have an encroachment?
Yeah, there's a statement on here that says it's 0.7 inches over the property line.
So,
Okay. Second question is, please describe, if you can, what type of carport would be allowed? I mean, we've had these come at us before where we've got that carport going up to the property line for whatever reason, but I'm hard pressed to think this kind of structure would be approved for a carport.
Even if it was a structure like the one across the street, which ironically we've heard something very similar just in this neighborhood about, a month ago. Even a structure like this, if it was set on the side of the building, according to our code, it would have to be within the setback. And we have heard several cases with carports before, even like with structures like this one, if they are within the setback, they are not in compliance with the code.
So we talking about 0.7 of an inch or?
0.7 of an inch. Yeah, that's what it says. So she was correct that it is less than an inch.
But that's over the property line, not the setback line.
No, that is over the property line. That is correct.
what's the will of the board?
Well, it's my feeling that this is definitely in violation of the setback code, and I think it needs to be brought into compliance. So I'm in favor of denial.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Mr. Johnson, Bill Johnson.
I'm going to make a substitute motion that, since basically this is in here to reduce the setback of it, as long as this thing is not on the neighbor's property, to approve it.
I would second that simply because this is a request to reduce the side setback from 6 feet to 0 feet. I think two things that need to be a part of this, though, is to have that survey formally received, and that there be evidently the survey does show that there's 7/10 of an inch, which I've never heard of that, but be more like maybe 3/4 of an inch over. But we need to ensure that anything that is over on the adjoining property needs to be remediated.
Mr. Johnson?
I might add, even though I'm highly influenced by metal, I think this particular carport fits in better with the existing home than the one that's built across the street.
You need to make sure I understand the motion. We've got a motion a substitute motion to approve per staff comment with the condition that no portion of the building exceed the property line. Is that a
That's correct.
fair assessment? Okay. Further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Foster, Mr. Florence?
Yeah, excuse me. I'm just cautious that we always approve bad behavior. And at some point in time, we need to stop doing that.
Any further discussion? Goes with the substitute motion to approve. Those in favor of the substitute motion signify with the upraised hand. 1, 2, 4. Those opposed to the substitute motion? 5. And 1 abstention. Okay, substitute motion fails. Brings us back to the original motion to deny. Any further discussion on the original motion? Seeing none, those in favor of the original motion signify with the upraised hand. Okay, those opposed? Motion passes 6-3. So the motion to deny is approved. Next item.
BZA 2019, or I'm sorry, 2020-01. The applicant is requesting the reduction of a side setback from 6 feet to 2 feet to allow for an existing partially enclosed carport. The applicant has stated that he purchased the property in 2018 with the existing carport. The previous owners failed to receive the required permits or variance to allow it. Property is zoned single-family SF5. To the south, it's TF3 and B multifamily. To the east is Hillside Avenue and the WSU campus, and to the north is SF5 as well. Here's an aerial image of it. You can see here that that's the carport on the addition of the house, and it does go off to the west a little bit. Apologize for the upside down letters, but this is just to make sure north is always up. Existing house here, carport is added, and this is where it exceeds into or encroaches into the side setback with a remainder of 2 feet on the property. Here's some pictures of the carport. You can see it's partially enclosed, added just over the driveway. Some windows in there. This is looking north from the side of the houses across the street. This is looking towards Hillside at the university campus. The applicant states regarding the uniqueness of the property is that he purchased it in 2018 with it already existing, and the previous owners were the ones who failed to obtain the required permits, placing the current owner in the unfortunate situation of having to pursue this variance. The carport is in cohesive nature with the home and has existed in the setback for many years. Due to the location of the home and the driveway being close to the property line, it is a logical location for a carport. Regarding the adjacent properties, the applicant states that they do not foresee any adverse harm to the nearby properties. In addition, the carport has existed in the setback for many years and does not impact the surrounding residents or their use and enjoyment of their properties. The applicant states that denial of this variance would prevent tenants from sheltering their vehicles in inclement weather. In addition, the carport provides a more secure place for parking the car versus on the street. And it makes the property more desirable for tenants. The applicant asserts that the variance requested it will not adversely affect the health, safety, morals, order, convenience, prosperity, or welfare, or harmonious development of the community. The carport brings value to the home and by extension the neighborhood. The carport does not diminish the property's value or their homes in the neighborhood, and the applicant feels that it does not violate the spirit and intent of the code. It does not encroach over the neighbor's property line, it just comes within 2 feet of it. Staff is recommending this variance be granted. The interior side setback will only be reduced for the portion of the carport, and that the applicant will have to obtain all necessary building permits and inspections. If any modifications need to be done, they will have to be done in order to comply with the state, county, and other local standards. With that, I can stand for any questions.
Questions, Mr. Johnson?
Why does the staff keep recommending these?
Who's the question to? Is that for staff? Okay.
We try to look at these at a fair and even nature, case to case. This one is not encroaching over the property line. There are provisions within the code to have setbacks reduced. As I said before, we look at these as a fair nature where this individual is not the one who built the carport. He's trying to come into compliance with the code. There are provisions in the zoning code that allow us by administrative adjustment to even reduce the side setback by 20%. That doesn't get him in compliance with the code, and that doesn't even have to be a public hearing process. So he's trying to get a little bit further than what an administrative adjustment would be in order to obtain a carport or to maintain a carport that was constructed prior to his ownership on the property.
I'd be interested in knowing if the documents when it was purchased showed this irregularity.
I'm unaware of that.
Was anything filed?
Filed with what?
With you to justify it?
Not with me. I'm standing in for Matt Williams. He was not able to make it today, so I apologize that I don't have that knowledge.
They did not file a survey. The only site plan we have is the hand-drawn survey that you have, or hand-drawn site plan that you have with your
Just a
application.
title policy with them.
Yeah, we didn't, there was nothing submitted with the application.
Philip, I got a question, and I'm in agreement with Mr. Foster that one reason to hear this was basically it's pretty unsightly. My question would be, which would be worse, which would be more unsightly, is if it was torn down and you got a portion of the house that it hasn't been dealt with for a number of years. Do we have any way of knowing how this structure, this carport structure is attached to the property? Is it with some headers? Is it, do we have anything that tells us?
Well, you can see that this eastern wall of it, if you look through in the interior here, this is the existing house wall of the house. This is just an extension of that wall, so it's not actually built next to the interior wall. The interior wall of the house is still there. It has its siding and windows and trim. It seems like it's just, and actually I don't know what the applicant can even say because he didn't build it. It looks like it's just, studs and trusses going across, and I don't know if it's actually attached to the house or if it's just freestanding.
Thank you. Ms. Miles? Yeah.
Philip, is the width of the driveway 16 feet or the same size as what the carport is? Is that what I understand from the drawing here?
That's what I understand, and even on the image here, you can see fairly well that the full width of the driveway, once you get past the actual inlet drive, is about the same distance as the carport.
And what would be the result of us denying this case? Would he have to?
It would have to be taken down.
Taken down?
Since it's now on record of being in violation of the code, he either gets a variance to make it acceptable to the code, or it would have to be taken down.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Blick?
Is the carport, does it look like, proportional, I'm looking at the other photos and stuff, is it about the same, about almost over half the width of the house on the front side, the facade?
According to the site plan, it says, let me get to that site plan, that it's 16 feet. The site plan shows that it's 12 and 22, so that's 34 feet across. So yeah, about a little less than half the width of the structure.
Thank you.
I've got a question.
Mr. Green?
Go ahead.
Philip, I got a question. You said it enhances the value of the property or enhances the
These are
value of the property as far as a rental?
Those are statements from the applicant. That is not staff's opinion. With variance cases, the applicant provides us with statements regarding the five stipulations for variances, and we communicate those on behalf of the applicant. He feels it adds value to his property.
As a rental?
As a rental.
Mr. Green?
Yeah, piggybacking on to Ms. Miles' question, yeah, I understand the structure would have to be taken down because it encroaches onto the adjacent property. Would the concrete slab also have to be removed since it encroaches on?
As a correction, it doesn't encroach on it just encroaches into the setback. The concrete slab could stay, and actually I could amend what I said. They can actually move the easterly wall of it in 2 feet and not encroach in the setback, and the carport can stay. So instead of being a 2-car or 1.5-car carport, it could be closer to maybe a 1.5 to 1 stall carport instead. So no, they would not actually have to tear the entire structure down. They would just have to make sure that is no longer encroaching into the setback.
If there's no additional questions for staff, we'll ask the agent or applicant to come forward. State your name and address for the record, sir, and you will have 10 minutes.
Okay, my name is Robinson. My address is 7147 East 40th Circle, Wichita, Kansas. So I bought this property 2018 April. When I bought this property, the cupboard was existing. So I did apply for a variance to keep the cupboard in place. So did you have any questions for me?
Any questions for the applicant? Mr. Foster.
On the interior of the carport, does that have stud or framing construction to hold up the siding?
Oh, it's this is OSP board.
And given that it's a wall, is it rest on any kind of a footing? Or is it just resting on the slab of the concrete?
No, it's attached to the.
Sir, we need you to speak in the microphone. We'll help you use the mouse to show us what's going on. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, this part is attached to the wall of the house. It's an extension of the wall of the house.
How about the other side?
This one here, it's also an OSP board with the siding outside.
And does it just sit on the concrete slab there as opposed to a foundation?
It's on the foundation. It's not siding. It's not sitting on the concrete. Just slightly immediately outside the concrete line.
Thank you.
Any additional questions for the applicant? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Is there anybody in the audience wish to speak on this issue? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board.
Thank you.
Mr. Blick?
I got a question for staff. If he decides to move that in, just supposedly if we vote one way or the other, and he decides to move that in, how long does he have to be before he's compliant? I mean, because then he's uncompliant right now.
Well, we'll have to get a permit to modify the structure, and in terms of the timing, I don't know that I don't recall what the length of time that is allowed to complete a building permit is, but there is a expiration on it.
Great, thank you, appreciate it.
Mr. Green?
Yeah, I'd like to go ahead and try a motion here to grant the request and have a condition that the walls need to be painted to match the existing structure.
Second. Any additional questions or comments? Mr.
I would like make sure that they check the structural integrity of the building, because if you look at it on those paintings, that's sagging quite a bit. So I think the structural integrity need to be, reviewed.
That is a condition of approval stated in the staff report, that they have to obtain any permits and inspections. And should any modifications need to be done to shore up the structural integrity of it, that those modifications will have to be made.
Okay, seeing no further questions, those in favor of the motion signify with the upraised hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those opposed, same sign. 7-3, it passes. Okay, thank you. Seeing no further items on the BZA, we will close the BZA and reopen the Planning Commission meeting. First item of business is the approval of the minutes from February 6, 2020. According to my records, all were here except Mr. Blick and Mr. Bill Johnson. Is there a motion on those minutes?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Joe Johnson and a second by Mr. Nix. Any additional questions? All those in favor signify with the upraised hand. Okay. Those opposed? And 2 abstentions, so 8-0-2. Okay, we will see which items we can take by consent. First item of business is agenda item 2.1, one-step final plat on property located near East 13th Street North and North Greenwich Road. Anybody on the commission wish to hear that item? Seeing none, is there anybody in the audience wish to hear item 2.1? Seeing none, we will take that by consent. Agenda item 2.2 is a one-step final plat on property located near East Harry Street and South Greenwich Road. Anybody on the commission wish to hear that item? Anybody in the audience wish to hear that item? Item 2.2 we will take by consent.
I move for approval of 2.1 and 2.2.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Joe Johnson, second by Mr. Hartman. Any additional comments? All those in favor, upraised hand. Passes unanimously. Is that 10? 10-0? 10-0. Public hearing for vacation items. 3.1, I think, had a recommendation for denial, so we will hear that one. Agenda item 3.2, vacation of building setback on property near East Douglas Avenue and South Washington. Anybody on the commission wish to hear that item? Seeing none, anybody in the audience wish to hear that item? We will take 3.2 by consent. Agenda item 3.3 is a vacation of a portion of an alley between Waterman and English Street. Anybody on the commission wish to hear that item? We will hear that item. Agenda item 3.4 is a vacation of a portion of a drainage easement near North Oliver and East 45th Street North. Anybody on the commission wish to hear that item? Anybody in the audience wish to hear item 3.4? Seeing none, we will take that by consent.
Move to approve agenda items number 3.2 and 3.4.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Miles, a second by Mr. Hartman. All those in favor signify with the upraised hand. Motion passes unanimously. Public hearing items. Agenda item 4.1 has been deferred to March the 19th. Agenda item 4.2 is a zone change from single family to two family near West 9th Street North and North McLean Boulevard. Anybody on the commission wish to hear that item? We will hear that item. Agenda item 4.3 is a conditional use to allow a 125-foot monopole near South Oliver and East 31st Street South. Anybody in the commission wish to hear that item? Seeing none, anybody in the audience wish to hear that item? Seeing none, we will take item 4.3 by consent. Agenda item 4.4, city zone change from multifamily to limited commercial near South Seneca and West Kellogg. Anybody on the commission wish to hear that item? And none, anybody in the audience wish to hear that item? Agenda item 4.4 near 814 South Seneca. Okay, we will hear that item. Agenda item 4.5 is a zone change from single family to limited industrial near North Hoover Road and West 29th Street North. We will, you want to hear that one? Yeah.
I believe the applicant is the one that's wanting to hear that.
Is that your application? Yeah? Yeah. Okay. Is there anybody else who wants to hear that? Seeing none, we will take that one by consent. Appreciate that, Ms. Miles. So that was item 4.4 will be added to our consent. Okay, now I'm not sure if we did 4.5, so I'll do it again. Zone change from single family to limited industrial near North Hoover Road and West 29th Street. Anybody on the commission wish to hear that item? Anybody in the audience wish to hear that item? Seeing none, we will take 4.5 by consent. Agenda item 4.6 is a city zone change from single family to general commercial near North Amadon and 235. Anybody in the commission wish to hear that? Seeing none, anybody in the audience wish to hear that item? We will hear that item. So consent or agenda items 4.3, 4.4, and 4.5. Have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Bill Johnson, second by Ms. Miles. Those in favor signify with the upraised hand. And motion passes 10-0. Takes us back to agenda item that was approved. Agenda item 3.1, vacation of a portion of a platted 20-foot setback. Philip?
Good afternoon, Philip Ziebenberg with planning staff. I am representing myself on this case. The applicant on this case is requesting the reduction of a 20-foot platted setback to 10 feet to allow a manufactured home, which is already placed on the property, to remain. The property is zoned MH, manufactured housing, and as you can see is generally located 1 block west of South Hydraulic and about 3/4 mile north of East 55th Street South. As I said before, the applicant has placed a 66-foot by 14-foot manufactured home on this lot. The home was constructed in 1996. As you can see, the lot is unique in that it has a curved frontage from Idlewild Street, which comes off of Hydraulic, down on South Victoria Street, which curves to the south. The property is located within a manufactured home subdivision. The Unified Zoning Code for a zoning setback, the minimum front setback is 25 feet. As I said before, the platted setback is 20 feet, so the platted setback already exceeds the zoning setback. The applicant is requesting a reduction to 10 feet, so it'd be reduced even further. The Unified Zoning Code also requires in a manufactured home subdivision that there be at least one parking stall per dwelling unit outside of the setback. If I come down here to the site plan, the only space for parking on this lot right now is in the entrance driveway. This curved line here is the front setback. You can see that the only parking space right now is within the setback. So part of this vacation case, if it were to be approved, would be either providing staff with a site plan that shows parking. You can see that they've indicated it here, and that building permit or occupancy permits would be withheld until that parking space is constructed, or the applicant could apply for a variance to get an exception to the parking rule. That aside, this case has been heard by the subdivision committee twice. It was deferred from the first one to give the applicant a little bit more time to do some homework. I'll speak about them in consecutive order. The first subdivision committee meeting was on January 30th of 2020. As you can see, the home is placed more in a north-south orientation and encroaches into the setback 10 feet. Several members of the public spoke in opposition to this case at that meeting. Their concerns generally were with the orientation of the home in this direction, it could potentially create a blind spot around the corner for vehicles traveling from Idlewild to Victoria or vice versa. They also were concerned that this could set a precedent for future reductions of setbacks in the future. This is the first request in their neighborhood, and their concern is that if this is approved, then it would open the door for others to buy larger manufactured homes and request setback reductions on other lots in the future. Recommendation from the subdivision committee on that date was to defer it 2 weeks to allow the applicant time to determine if there was an alternate orientation that the home could be placed on the lot that would potentially require a reduction of the setback in a different location, or potentially to have it on the lot without any reduction of setbacks at all. On February 13th, last week, the applicant came back. They did provide an updated site plan with two options. You can see a non-solid color outline here that places the home in front of the existing trees. It would require a reduction of the setback in two different locations, but not to the same extent. An issue with this one is that the drive would have to be moved further south to allow for access and parking on the site in order to be in compliance. The other option is the solid colored rectangle here. You can see that it is within all setbacks around the property, and there would be sufficient space for parking. At that time, staff and the applicant were recommending further deferral of it to see if the applicant would be able to maneuver the home into this location without having to cut down or disturb the existing trees. It's one thing to draw a rectangle on a piece of paper. It's a whole nother thing to actually physically move a home in that direction. During a lengthy discussion at the subdivision committee meeting last week, including some public comment with raising some of the similar concerns of they don't want it on the north-south orientation for the blind spot, as well as the precedent set of having a reduction of a setback in the neighborhood. The recommendation from the subdivision committee was to move for denial of this case. The opinion of the subdivision committee was that given the nature of the trees, this would be one of them. And forgive me, I don't remember the exact species, but Mr. Foster can speak to that himself. It's a pear tree that it was a small price to pay to lose the existing trees if you could put the home on the lot without having to reduce any of the setbacks. And so Again, with that, their recommendation was to deny this request and not reduce any of the setbacks. There are no public utilities or private utilities in the setback area if the vacation were to be approved. And I do believe the applicant's overall request is that they don't have to move the home, that the setback would be reduced as initially requested. We do have a couple options where they could reduce the setback in another location. This is not, neither of these options is really preferred by the applicant. But again, it was the subdivision committee's recommendation that it be placed in this location, not having to reduce any of the setbacks at all. With that, I can stand for any questions.
Questions for staff, Mr. Johnson?
So approving option 2 would not be within our purview because it wasn't asked for, right?
Scott, can you speak to that?
I mean, you could approve option 2, but option 2 does not require a vacation. So if you deny the vacation, they can just do option 2 with a building permit.
Additional questions for staff? Thank you. Agent or applicant, if you'd like to come forward, please state your name and address for the record, and you will have 10 minutes.
Okay. Hello, my name is Justin Mann. I'm currently living at 3421 Bluestem, Rose Hill, Kansas. So for all of you, I'd like to start by providing some background on the story, how this situation kind of came to be. So I'm a recent college graduate from K-State, moved back to Wichita looking for a job and place to live. Acquired this home in Valley Center and worked on its outward appearance, working with the current HOA and their HOA president to get approval to move the home into the neighborhood itself. Once we got approval from the HOA to have it moved, we had contracted Southside Mobile Homes to move the home for us. Like most people, we did not have the ability to move the home ourselves. We worked with Southside Mobile Homes and had them come to the lot to discuss the orientation and placement of the home on the lot. So I had looked into, and I was relying on their expertise and experience to have a better understanding of what the rules and setbacks are. I personally had looked into the setbacks and found the zoning code for manufactured homes subdivision saying it is 25 feet from the arterial street right away. This is where the first misunderstanding took place, where we took arterial street and assumed it meant from the curb. By this time, we'd gotten the moving permit from the city, where its only further explanation was 20 feet from the front yard building setback, 6 feet from the side, and 20 feet from the rear, and then no floodplain. It was its only information given to us about the correct orientation of how we can place the home. So this was a contradiction to the zoning code, but we moved forward with moving the home and then placed it 30 feet from the curb from the west, 28 from the north, and 26 foot, the diagonal, away from the curb. Assuming that it met the requirements, which the movers were in agreement with the home being placed accurately. We'd had the home set and the tongue cut off for aesthetics. We had at one point talked to the HOA president about the current home's placement, and he was not under the impression it was in violation. We were working on the home one day, and that's when we first found from a neighbor that we were possibly in violation. Later that day, to our surprise, a city inspector came out and informed us that what we're working on couldn't be completed until after final inspection. We asked him if we were in violation, and he did not know. We showed him a moving permit and asked him if he could provide insight to the situation, being a city inspector, and he said he was only a setting and electrical inspector and could not speak and did not understand the zoning rules and setbacks. So we waited a few days and had the zoning inspector come out and inform us that we were indeed in violation, at which it still was not clear what the problem was at the time, other than we were in violation. Eventually, we were informed that the 25-foot setback is from the edge of the sidewalk inward on the lot. From the inspector, we were given the impression the only in violation was from the west side here. So our initial setback understanding was the setback was only from the front of the house towards the inward curb. So that led us to believe there was only 7 feet of the home being in violation, and to the north was considered, we were given the impression it was only a side setback of only 6 feet. So then we filed our variance with the city and had our first subcommittee meeting, which was apparent. We were very unclear what we were walking into. From that meeting, 2-week deferral, developed this new site plan that you see here. And then after that meeting, Philip. Philip, who has been really helpful, and appreciate all he's been helping understand this process and procedure. But after that meeting, he informed me that the setback was now different from what the inspector had given us from the time of our vacation, my understanding. And it's now 20 feet along the rear and 20 feet up along both Victoria and Idlewild. This was contradictory to what we were in the impression from the inspector that came out. So from that time, we then realized that the home was now, since it was 20 feet instead of the 5 as shown, we were in violation both the front and the rear. So we were trying to go along that route, and then that was determined because this lot has an Idlewild address, and since the north would be the front of the lot and the rear would be the 20 feet. So this was, once again, different from the inspector. So these new, so to accommodate, we think we've adjusted it instead of the 7 to be a solid 10 feet for action to move forward. So when I sent this site plan here to Philip for the preliminary review when I made it, because I've never made one before, he's very helpful for improvements. And so he later then showed it to someone else with some more experience in this field. And then once again, there's an additional change to the site back to where it is now, instead of being 20 feet from the south here, it is along the southeast corner in a 20-foot radius. Which brings us to now. So sorry for the long story, but I believe it helps provide insight to the situation from my side. So my point to this is being that this lot is unique and it very isn't obvious what the setbacks are, or at least not clear enough for another normal person in the public, like me or some representative to understand. Like, I understand the option number 2 presented today here looks like a workable option, but I'm arguing the fact that it is not an apparent option when you're at the lot physically and you look at existing structures on the lot. So existing structures on the lot, we're taking being the existing driveway and how the trees were, and then back this here is a back patio. So we were led under the impressions, when that the previous home that was set here was set in the same about orientation being north. An additional problem with option 2 is the fact that when putting the house in the back in the corner here really reduces the side of your backyard to almost nothing, which I wouldn't say a lot of people would say is a feature of the property because it pretty much removes your backyard. In addition, speaking to this property's uniqueness, if this lot itself was just a bit more rectangular instead of the curvature that it is, the amount, if this was more rectangular, the amount that we would actually be encroaching on the setback would almost be near nothing, to where we wouldn't actually need to be having this hearing take place. And once again, this home is only 66 feet long, where new mobile homes being single wide average about 72 feet long with a max of being 90 feet long. So this really isn't a case of too large of a home trying to be put on a small lot. I am still asking for approval of its home, its current orientation, due to uniqueness and the difficulties of a public person to understand what the necessary requirements are about the uniqueness of this lot. I'll stand for questions.
Questions for the speaker? Justin, I've got one. The first question is how much would it cost to have, do you have any idea what it would cost to have a mover come out? And if we were to change the orientation here, what would the expense be to change the orientation?
Yes, I have not spoken to a mover personally to get a direct quote for this yet, but my understanding to get the home, one of the reasons we chose this current orientation is because this is a big loop to drive around, and so we were under the impression that they just go around the big loop and pull straight in with the trailer. It'd be real easy. To put it in this option number 2 orientation, but potentially it would be pulling it, backing in from the street possibly, and then depending on how far it can go, then they'd have to pull walkers in, which the movers said they'd have to rent out. So my understanding, it would be very expensive compared to where it's currently at.
The lot, having been involved in residential construction, corner lots that are curved like that are always difficult to figure out a way to do it. So I appreciate the difficulty here. One of the questions that I had, and it would be a slight variation from any of the options, would be from the orientation where where the house is moved now, if you were to move the back end directly towards the corner, move that to the right, as I'm looking at it, no, move it the other way.
Oh, move it the other way?
Back, yeah, right to there. And line it up, straight from the back. It still would be in violation of the 25-foot setback, but it probably would be more like 2 or 3 foot instead of 10 foot. Is that something that would there be a reason why that could not be moved? Just move the back end slightly to the right?
Your problem with that, the only issues I can foresee with that is the fact the tongue is on this south corner here. So I'm not 100% sure how you move it, but you should. You just have to back up the trailer, and then I think you'd push it in for it to go the way, because you cannot get the 20-foot trailer into this, or the truck itself just in the corner. So I'm just can't speak to how you move the home.
Mr. Florence?
Am I correct that you guys own additional lots within that park that are bigger that can accommodate this more easily?
I don't own any other lots there, and I'm still at, I guess. I'm not sure how you.
I remember when you was in the front of the commission subdivision that you said you guys own some additional lots there.
That was other members of the public speaking about, I believe, properties my dad has. Yeah.
Mr. Johnson?
The rectangle there by the tree, is that a patio?
Yes, this is a back patio that was pre-existing when we moved the home to the lot. So that's what led us to believe that this was the previous orientation of a home.
It would seem to me if you rotated the manufactured home to the right and put the bottom line right on the property line,
Yes.
it would fit in there.
Yeah.
You'd have to take out a little bit of the patio, but it fits in there very nicely.
Yeah, once again, we were kind of, what I was trying to bring up is the issue was that we were not fully aware, I guess, what the exact setbacks were, and we were trusting the moving company to have further expertise and knowledge of doing this before to know whether or not the home would be in violation.
Okay. Ms. Miles?
So I just want to confirm, you don't own any other lots in this mobile home park? Is that correct?
I do not. I would say my father does own other lots in the neighborhood, but I do not. I personally don't see how it's exactly relevant because, like, yes, there's always somewhere else you can move a large home. Like, we can always get land out in the country somewhere, move the home out there. But
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no further questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody from the audience wish to speak on this issue? Go to the microphone, please, sir. State your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes.
My name is Jimmy Conrad, and I live at 1409 East Idlewild in Wichita. I live right across the lake from where this house is here. And I've been past president of the board of the association there. And when I first took it over there, I learned real quickly what all the rules and regulations were through J.R. Cox down at the commission there. He told me what all the setbacks were, and I've lost it there. And he let me know real quick. Somebody did not do their homework whenever they allowed this house to be set in there, which was not 20 feet setback. Then the second thing is the company that moved him in there may not have cared. All they wanted to do is get their money and get out of there. And like he said, the tongue is down here on this end of the house, and they took it off real quick so they wouldn't have to worry about it. But thing of it is that can be welded back on there very easily, and that house be moved wherever it is. To start with, the house is way too big for this corner lot, because when I was president there, they had several houses that they tried to move in there, and they found out that the setbacks could not be done before they ever even had the chance to move them in there. And as far as maybe this gentleman here don't own the other lot where his dad has property down on 52nd Street, his dad does have a property down there that he could probably let him move his house to, and maybe exchange properties with his dad or something. But nevertheless, this other lot on 52nd Street is way big, and he could put that house on there just about anywhere he wanted to and be within all the legal setbacks of all the, excuse me, of all the property. And so the only thing that I asked, and the thing about it that several of the people that have come with us today, is that you deny this request because, not because he didn't do his homework, because it just don't fit that property right. And I thank you very much. Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Is there anybody else in the audience wish to speak on this item? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Tim Logan, 1207 East 52nd Street South, Wichita, Kansas, Pinewood Estates. The setback of 20 foot here is a very big concern because of the safety coming around here. And this gentleman here refers to only owning this lot. There is multiple lots in that property in the Sedgwick County tax appraisal that is under the same name. That appears like right around the corner here is owned by the same company, I believe, that claims ownership of this one. And it would accommodate this home very easily. It is one of the larger lots. All these lots are different sizes. This here is the very smallest lot, and the other lot is one of the largest lots there. And if we allow this here, they are investing in multiple lots there, and they will come in and just start setting homes in every way and say, well, ordinance was wavered or allowed us to do it in this case. So I believe that if we could get him to tell us who owns this, because I had spoke to him, and the homeowners association is not responsible for them doing the setback, the homework on where it sets. That is the owner's responsibility, which would be this gentleman here, or maybe the manufactured home movers that would do it, that moved it in. It's not the homeowners. So the homeowners association has nothing to do with approving where that home sets like he was referred to. Maybe the manufacturer of the home and the quality of the home they do, but that's it. And that's what I believe. Out of the 3 options, 3 would be a workable deal. Those trees that they talked about maybe removing were volunteers. Ever since I've lived there, they've just grown up from nothing. Nobody planted them. It's not a curb appeal or anything to do with the landscape to make it better. And that's why the concern I have with that and with him putting this home in here, and there are homes, and like Mr. Conrad said when he was president, there was multiple times homes were denied to be put in there because they did not fit. And if option 2, you refer to option 2, it would have 2 violations. They may not be, because this sets back 9.5 foot out of a 20-foot setback. So it's more than half of the violation there. The other one, option 2, there would be 2 violations around the corner, well, right around the corner here, and here would be the violation. This setting here, and they can maneuver that home in here and get it in, which they have done in the past in this particular lot. And like I said, you can look and see that this little lot here is one of the smaller ones here in comparison to these homes here. And like I said, it's
Your time
sorry.
expires, sir.
Any questions? Do I need to answer anything for anyone?
Any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else in the audience wish to speak on this issue? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Linda Lyle, live at 1403 East Idlewild, just down the road. My issue is completely different. Summer's going to be out. The vision of drivers coming across there and not being able to see each other, children playing My issue is, are we going to take a chance of a child getting hurt or move the home? Thank you.
Any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, thank you, ma'am. Is there anybody else in the audience wish to speak on this issue? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the agent or applicant. You will have 2 minutes for rebuttal.
That's fine. I'm not sure if they're further along or not.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can use the arrows to move up and down.
Okay. Thank you. I'd like to quickly speak about the vision, something that I guess was not brought up before. There are photos taken, as you can see from. So this is a photo taken going around the corner, as you see on the right over here. You can clearly see a parked car here. And then so if you move around the corner to where you're standing at the entryway of the curb looking inward, you can see an oncoming car coming along the street here. This is on Idlewild itself, coming around the corner to where the house does, or you can see the car oncoming. And then moving along, if you come to this corner here, this is where the parked car was, which was just on the far side of the driveway here. So you have, at the corner itself, you have pretty clear lines of sight going around the corner. And then even further back, back where you can see here, looking around, if you can remember where the car was parked there on the west side of the street there doesn't really appear to be a whole lot of obstruction of vision for oncoming cars. I do not believe I have anything else.
Any other questions for the applicant?
I can flip back through pictures, I guess, if I went too quickly.
I don't see anything. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Bring it back to the commission. I'll start off. I'm looking at, there's the difficulty of corner lots like this bring me to a point where I want to do something. I think that the option where the property is sitting now, where the trailer is sitting now, is probably excessive. So I'm looking at the idea of option one has very minor obstruction of that. The other possibility, and my understanding, and I don't know if this to be a fact, but that the orientation of other trailers that have been on this lot in the past would go from the back corner to towards the center, so that it would move the back end of that trailer where the tongue used to be more of that alignment. If you were to do that, that would put this particular mobile home probably only in violation of maybe 2 or 3 foot would be the most, instead of 10 foot as it sits now. So that's my leaning, would be something that would grant an easement, but not in the current orientation. I'll just throw that out there for discussion purposes. Mr. Johnson.
I mean, looking at the site plan, I could see where that worked, but if the tongue's on the bottom part of that trailer, I don't know how you would get a vehicle in there to move it to that corner. If the tongue was on the other end, it'd be easy.
I don't know how they do that. Mr. Florence.
I just think the trailer's too big for that lot.
Go ahead.
I couldn't hear what he said.
Would you repeat that again, Mr. Florence? What I never heard.
I said, I think that the trailer is just too big for that lot.
Mr. Joe Johnson.
My comment would be, I think it fits on the lot fine if you just turn it perpendicular with the back line.
You're talking option?
No option there.
None of the options.
None of the options. Okay, option 4.
My option.
My option is option 3. Your option is option 4.
Right.
The J square option.
What Mr. Johnson is talking about, he showed me a drawing he has on his picture with this orientation here. Instead of it being tilted this way, like moving it more vertically, more due north and south, and putting it back on the setback line here and having it face due north would either fit within the setbacks or be less obstructive to this front setback.
Ms. Miles?
I think the comment that I want to make is that, I mean, Mr. Florence is correct. This trailer is probably a little bit too big for this lot, but that being said, I think we have provided several options for placement of the trailer on the lot, so for it to be within the setbacks. And for for that reason, I am going to make a motion to deny.
Second.
I have a second. I'm going to make a substitute motion. And then going in line with the idea that there's a middle ground here that can satisfy the aspect of vision triangle and problems, is to approve to whatever orientation that the owner likes to make, provided it does not exceed the setback violation by more than 3 foot. Now, that gives him multiple options as to how they want to lay that out. Would take care of safety issues, and give them the opportunity to use a difficult lot to use something that would work for them. So that would be my motion.
Second.
We have a second. Mr. Foster?
Would that include making sure that the parking requirement is met?
I'm not sure what the requirements for parking are on the, is that a code or is that
the zoning code requires that they have one parking space outside of the setback. So regardless of how this is oriented, that is something that was brought up through the processing of this case that is going to be required of them unless, and the recommendation staff has in the staff report is that a revised site plan indicating where the parking is provided to staff before going to city council, and that occupancy permits would be withheld until the construction of that parking space.
There's nothing in my motion that would deny the ability to still require that parking condition. Mr. Bill Johnson?
I guess I'm curious if you'd go a little bit more than 3 foot, because basically it's just gonna be the corner of the unit. If the whole thing was setting 3 foot in the deal, I could understand it, but we're dealing with just the corners of it, and I think that's gonna limit it pretty tightly, but if we'd say 5 foot at the corners.
Okay. I would amend my motion to 5 foot.
I'll second it.
Motion, the original motion confirmed that, so. Additional comments? Those in favor of the substitute motion signify with the upraised hand. 5 in favor. Those opposed? 4. Passes 5-5? 5-5, okay. Motion fails. Now I'll go back to the original motion to deny. No further discussion. All those in favor of the motion to deny? Motion against the motion? Motion passes. Next item.
Vacation 2020-02. The applicant is requesting the vacation of an alley right-of-way located between Waterman and English, as well as between Washington and Mosley Avenues. Mosley is where these railroad tracks are. The purpose for this vacation is to improve safety in the area. The portion of the alley is surrounded mostly by vacant property. If we see the aerial image here, all this area is vacant. This is vacant. The aerials currently shows some storage on here, I guess, for commercial uses, but the majority of this L-shaped parcel is vacant. There is an abandoned warehouse building that is vacant at the entrance to the alley. In addition, there's a parcel in here under separate ownership with a Quonset hut that is used for commercial purposes at this time. The applicant is the city of Wichita. This case is unique in that the city is pursuant of Kansas statute 13-443. This is different than the typical Kansas statute that is pursuant for most other right-of-way vacations. The typical one that is usually pursued is KSA 12-505. I've put some language in your staff report as to the language for KSA 13-443. I'll go over it in general. Basically, first-class cities have the right to initiate the vacation of any right-of-way, so street, alley, lane, things of that nature. And some of the differences are, like, basically because they own the alley. KSA 12-505 requires that a abutting property owner is the initiator of the vacation. And since the city does not own any of the property that abuts this portion of the alley, they have the authority to initiate the vacation under KSA 13-443. Some of the similarities is if this vacation were to be approved, the vacation reverts back to private property to the degree in which it was dedicated. We did some research through a lengthy discussion at the subdivision committee meeting, and there's some supplemental information you have there. It's a 24-foot wide alley. It was initially a 16-foot dedication, and then sometime later 4 feet on either side of the alley was dedicated in the future, so it's a 24-foot alley. Because it was equally dedicated on either side, each property to the east and to the west would get 12 feet should this vacation be approved. Where there's differences between KSA 12-505 and 13-443 is that with 12-505, vacation petitions need to be signed by abutting property owners giving their consent to the vacation of the alley. That is not a requirement of 13-443. 12-505 has a provision in there of a opposition clause. So if a letter of opposition is submitted to the city clerk at or before the time of the public hearing, it pretty much ceases the hearing of that case. We recently had a case within the last 2 months, if you remember, there at Kellogg and West Street. It was West and Taft, where a letter of opposition was filed against the applicant, and that vacation application stopped under 12-505. Again, in 13-443, there is no such clause for such a provision. Getting into the backstory of the reasons behind this vacation, the applicant, again, the city of Wichita, says it's for improved safety in the area. Part of the staff report is an accident report from 2005 to 2019 provided by the Wichita Police Department. It indicated 133 accidents over the reporting period. The data was collected at the intersection of Washington and Waterman, Washington and English, and the 100 block to the north and to the west of the Washington and Waterman intersection. And that equates about 10 accidents a year. The applicant understands that that's not necessarily a significantly, statistically significant number, but there are other safety considerations to take into account. The alley being 150 feet away from a major intersection violates the city's access guidelines. In addition, it is currently improperly used as cut-through traffic to avoid the intersection. People can cut over on English and down the alleyway to avoid the intersection. It is also improperly used for parking during events at Interest Bank Arena, which are just to the west here, about less than a half a mile away. And finally, the state law prohibits the use of alleys for through traffic, and this one has been identified as being used for through traffic. If this vacation is approved, the land with the Quonset hut on it would not have access to any public right-of-way. To remedy this, the city has had, and we've got an exhibit here, you've got an updated one showing it here. This land in the green has been deeded to the city to provide an access easement to this Quonset hut property here. That would take care of the access issue. They would have access to English Street, which would get them out to Washington and away from the site. Fire has reviewed the access easement. It's 24 feet wide, which meets the minimum standard for fire access to the property. This exhibit also shows that dedication I was talking about. The blue was the initial alley dedication. The red was the 4 feet on either side of the alley for the dedication. There is a public sewer line as well as Evergy and Cox facilities within the alleyway, so an easement will be dedicated in its place. there was an extensive discussion at the subdivision committee meeting last week. A lot of it based on the legal precedent of whether or not the city is pursuing the statute correctly. We did have legal advisement during that meeting saying that 13-443 does take precedent over 12-505. I think I'll defer to our legal representation today to go into the details of what of why that takes precedent. They're a little bit more well-versed in what the law states on this regard. Overall, the subdivision committee did vote to approve this 3-1. And I can stand for any staff questions.
Mr. Green?
On the legal the legal, I guess, the city's legal department gave the recommendation that 13-443 was the one that was to be used instead of the 12-505.
Yes, I did.
Are you representing the applicant?
No, I am not.
But the city is the applicant.
There are two separate attorneys here today just because of that issue. While I'm with the law department, I'm representing the board in its function, and Jeff Van Zandt is representing the city as the applicant for the vacation.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Bill Johnson?
How many times has this ever happened? I don't ever remember the situation where normally a vacation, the applicant on both sides of the alley requested. In this case, neither one of them signed it in the city of Wichita. And the reason to do it, because it's dangerous, is the city going to close all these alleys that are within 150 foot? I mean, this totally blows me away. How many cases have been like this?
I don't know of any.
Me neither, and I've been on here a while.
Mr. Green?
Yeah, so if we use this 13-443, then the property owner that has the Quonset hut, would he then gain 12 foot of right-of-way, since that would be half of the adjacent alley?
That is correct.
That would become his property?
Right. For the frontage that he has on the alley, he would gain 12 feet of the alley property would be deeded to his land, and the property owner, all the rest of the property is under one ownership around him. They would gain the additional 12 feet for the frontage that they have.
And then I see from the site map here that there's an access easement dedication. Who would be responsible for laying that out, and who would be responsible for maintaining that easement? Who would be responsible for laying that easement out? Currently, it's got a 6-foot privacy fence completely around it with barbed wire on top of it. So there would have to be some sort of easement opening made to that, and then who would be the responsible party for maintaining that easement?
The portion of land that the easement goes over has been deeded to the city, so it's my understanding that the city would be responsible for maintaining it. I'll defer to Jeff Van Zandt representing the applicant on this, and he can speak towards that.
Mr. Black?
Just for clarification, you said an alley, and that's what it looks like it's being used as, but on the map that's provided, it says Mosley Street. So is it a street or is it an alley?
That was, the map has actually been updated since then. That was an error on the GIS map. I believe I don't have the older version. Mosley Avenue runs here, and that is actually consistent with the plat. There was an error on GIS that said Mosley was in the alley.
Thank you.
Mr. Foster?
Just a point of clarification, at the subdivision meeting, it was discussed that the access easement would come from the north, and where it would be, whether it be within the alley or that dedication that exists, it could go either way, was the discussion, depending on providing proper access to the Quonset hut property.
I can let Jeff extrapolate that on this a little bit more, but in conversation with him afterwards, the city, in order to give him access, as I said before, this, especially this L-shaped portion right here, is a different owner. The city doesn't own it. The city only has a deed to this property right here. So to move it, they would have to either have the private property owner deed, provide the access, or deed additional land to the city in order to provide access to this property at a different location.
Mr. Green?
And I guess the basis or the reason for this vacation is for safety. And I did notice the traffic accidents in the area. I don't see any that are close to this alley, whether it's down at Waterman or up at English. Through traffic, do we have traffic counts in there that indicate how much traffic is going through there? It sounds like it would be very dangerous if it was of significant safety concern to vacate this.
I do not believe that we have any traffic counts, but I'll let Jeff talk about that.
Okay. Mr. Joe Johnson?
Yeah, Philip, just a clarification. You said the alley was originally 16 feet and then they added 4 feet on each side to make it 24?
Correct.
Is that correct?
Any other questions for staff? Phil, you want any clarification? Do you need anything else before where would my next step be?
No, I'll just point out this, you have this at your table as well. This is a section, a snippet of the overall quarter section map, which comes from the original plat. This is Mosley Avenue right here. As you can see, they have the avenue portion of it. I didn't have the Mosley, it got cut off, I apologize. So here's the alley in question. This is the portion of the alley in question to be vacated. What's in pink was the original dedication of the alley. What's in yellow on either side with the measurements of 4, 16, and 4, and you can even read the label up here says alley widened 4 feet on either side. So that's, again, this is the quarter section map that is on file with the county, comes from the original plat. Showing where the dedications have come from and showing that Mosley Avenue is where the railroad tracks are.
Would the agent for the city of Wichita like to come forward, please? State your name and address for the record, and you have 10 minutes.
Thank you. Jeff Van Zandt, Assistant City Attorney, 455 North Main. It's a pleasure to be on this side of the podium. As Philip stated, this is it's not unique. It has happened, and please understand, I just wrote an article for the Kansas Bar Journal on this, and I've read every dusty old case that exists in Kansas on this. 13443 is specifically designed for when a city wishes to add or vacate a street. If you look at 12505, the language in there specifically states that it is for an adjacent property owner in which a hearing should be held either in front of the city council or the commission. In this case, the public hearing is not heard by the city council, so that's why it's brought here. The proper and most specific and direct statute pertaining to the vacation of an alley or a street within the city limits is 13443. Under Kansas law, no reason need to be given. There's even an attorney general opinion that says that there, in a city of the third class, which is a similar provision to this 443, which is a city of the first class, there's also another provision for the city of the second class, that no discussion even need to be made. It can be just made by a vote by the city council. The city of Wichita has an ordinance that says all vacations must be presented through the subdivision and